Before I bring him up here, I want to just say a few things about Dr. Phil Kovoor. Dr. Phil Kovoor is our Medical Director of Oncology Services here at Baylor Plano. He took over the role in September of 2016 and has done a fantastic job so far. He specializes in hematology and oncology. He's double board certified in internal medicine and medical oncology. He received his Doctor of Medicine and did his residency at UT Medical School in Galveston, Texas. And then he went on to do his fellowship in hematology and oncology at Georgetown University at Lombardi Cancer Center in Washington, D.C., where he also served as Chief Fellow there at Lombardi Cancer Center. Dr. Kovoor has become a close friend of mine, a mentor, and he is probably the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. At times I feel like he's a walking dictionary, but what I've learned about Dr. Kovoor, probably more than anything, is that his heart is probably bigger than anyone I've ever met in my life. And after talking to some of you in the room, I think that you feel the same way. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Dr. Phil Kovoor up to the stage.
Thank you, Ryan. That was a very, very kind introduction. I'll have to pay you later. Public speaking really is not my thing, but I'm honored to be here. When I was asked to do this, I wasn't really exactly sure what I was going to say. So I decided I'd just kind of share a personal testimony of faith in medicine and why I really went into oncology. And it's kind of a long story. To really understand it, I've got to kind of tell you where I am now, I've got to tell you where I came from. And so I grew up in an Orthodox family. My parents immigrated here to the States in 1975. I was born in the U.S. I'm guessing my age by then. And so what was interesting about our background is we can actually trace our lineage back to 72 AD. And our original ancestors originated from Syria, and they were Christian missionaries, and they went to India to spread the gospel. And so that's kind of where we started from. I attended a church that was in 3 languages. Malayalam, which is an Indian dialect, ancient Syriac, and English. And English was the one that was used the least. And so it was pretty hard to follow as a kid. Colloquially fluent in my native dialect, but and I know English, and it can be difficult at times. But I grew up in a hyper-religious family. And a lot of that I think stemmed from my mom. In our house, prayer time was at 9 p.m. It could be the Super Bowl, and 1 minute left, and the TV was going on. That's kind of how I grew up. I'm naturally introverted. You can ask my wife. She likes to talk. I like to listen. So we're a good match. But as a kid, I always kind of knew I wanted to be a doctor, and it was just a passion at an early age. I can't explain it to you. Just that I just liked the human body, and it really interested me. And so it was something I knew I wanted to do. But interestingly enough, I never wanted to be an oncologist. And I'll tell you why. My uncle in California was an oncologist, and we would go visit. And you know what? I would never see him. When we would wake up, he would already be gone. When we would go to sleep, he'd come back. And even as a kid, I was the kid that wanted children. So I knew I wanted to spend time with my kids, and I would think, gosh, I don't want to do that, or I'm never home. And so a seed planted at an early age that I didn't want to do oncology. Are you guys having trouble with this mic? There we go. Okay. It takes a medical degree to figure that out. I had this early seed planted that I didn't want to be an oncologist. And interestingly enough, just academically, I was probably a little academically challenged early on in life. I was born in the U.S., but somehow I made it into the ESL classes. And if you grew up in Texas, that's English as a second language. But English was my first language, so I didn't quite get that. But there I was. In 5th grade, I'd say that I probably, first time I really faced some just physical and emotional challenges. I was bullied heavily, and it was a tough time. And I'll tell you that I didn't understand why. And you didn't, in this time of life, people didn't really know much about that, and there's really no way to get help, but I'll tell you, it strengthened my faith in retrospect. Because all I did was pray, And I made it through that year, but I truly believe that through trials and tribulations, you build character and perseverance. And let me tell you something, I built a lot of character during that year. In sixth grade, I'll tell you, and I'll have to say it's probably just a God thing, something just turned on. And I went from being a very mediocre student to having this intellectual explosion. And I was just very fixated on school, and things really changed. My best friend was called Mountain Man. I think God put him in my life. He was the biggest kid in school. His football helmet came from high school. And let me tell you, nobody messed with me in middle school. So that was kind of nice. But in that intellectual explosion, I had the highest GPA in the school. I got the Student of the Year award, and it just kind of took off from there. A few years later, though, my faith really got reinforced. We came across a kid, and his name was Isaac, and he was diagnosed with ALL. And he was 9 when he was diagnosed, and he was battling. And 2.5 years he journeyed fighting this ALL diagnosis. I grew up in Houston, so he was at the medical center in Houston. And 2.5 years in, they ran out of options. And basically, the doctors there committed him to hospice. And they said, you've got days to weeks to live. By this time, he's 12. And this is the story as Isaac tells it. He was in his room. He was praying, actually. He had a picture of Christ on his wall. And he was reaching for a tissue box. And he looked up and he got startled. And what he describes is that he looked up, and I'm just translating, that he said the eyes on this picture started to move and tears started to flow down, and he screamed. He ran out of the room, got his mother, and he instantly felt better. Incidentally, he had a pediatrician visit, and he went to go get labs done. And he got a CBC done, and all his blood testing was normal. They had no explanation. They said, go see your oncologist, go to the medical center. So they ran all the tests, did the bone marrow, did the blood testing, and his ALL was in remission. So they had this picture in the sanctuary of this church, and I had the privilege to go see that. And I see these tears flowing down this painting. I've never seen anything more amazing than that. But what was unequivocal there was that a miracle happened. And it reinforced my faith that, hey, amazing things can happen, and the God that we believe in is limitless. Now, a few years later, when I turned 17, I'll just tell you something about the Kovoor house. We were just all Y chromosome, my poor mom. And, God gifted us with a cousin, and she was this beautiful girl. And we were much older than her. And she at about 3, she developed cross-eyed. And they were looking into this, and long story short, she was diagnosed with a medulloblastoma type of brain cancer. This is when she was 3, and she battled. This is interesting. I didn't know much about cancer, definitely not medical. And I would go down to Michigan, and we would go to the doctor's visits, and wow, that was challenging. One, sitting on the other side of the table, you kind of get that it was difficult to process everything, and you appreciate doctors that took time explaining things to you. But it was just overwhelming, right? And unfortunately, she lost that battle to medulloblastoma right before her 4th birthday. She went home to be with the Lord on July 19th, 1995. And wow, I was angry. I'll tell you, I was heartbroken because I couldn't understand why something like that would happen. And there's a scripture, I'll tell you, which I didn't believe at the age of 15, Jeremiah 29:11. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plan to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And I will tell you that I thought that scripture was false. That how can somebody prosper? How do you have a hope and a future for a 3-year-old, close to 4, passing away and suffering? That was difficult. And so, like any teenage person, I just put all those feelings inside here, never talked about it, and went to college. And so I went to undergrad at Baylor. First time in my life I was away from my parents. And I had in my mind that I wanted to do medicine. Again, not oncology, but just medicine. And so I became a chemistry major. I was fascinated with the sciences, so I would take every class I could take. Biology, I loved physics and math, and I did all of that. And I really enjoyed it. God opened up some supernatural doors. I didn't have the initial intention to do oncology research, but I ended up in an oncology research lab doing tubulin binding ligands. And I was doing IC50 assays and doing very basic science type things. And this is modern day Taxol and taxing. And it's interesting because I use it all the time in practice now, but in retrospect, my drive was fueled by what happened to my cousin. And that was another seed planted for oncology that I didn't even realize. I never really went to any churches outside of the Orthodox or Catholic faith. Usually growing up, my dad said, well, this is where you have to go, so I just went. And so I didn't have a car, and my brother told me about a church, and it's called Church Under the Bridge. I don't know if anybody ever heard of that, but it's actually Interstate I-35 in Waco. And I could walk there because it was right across from my dorm room. But something you need to know about me, I was a germaphobe. Literally a germaphobe. Washing my hands, if someone shook my hand, I'd be washing my hands. Changing my clothes all the time, and taking showers all the time. So Church Under the Bridge was an interesting dynamic because one, it was outdoors, and the floor was really rubble, and the roof was Interstate I-35. During the winter, it was ridiculously cold because it was a wind tunnel. And during the summer, it could get extremely hot. But what's interesting about that church is the congregation. It was college students, a few locals, and homeless people. And at any given Sunday, you could have 2 homeless people around you. If you're a churchgoer at any period of time in your life, you know that there's a portion in service where they say, greet your neighbor. And a germaphobe, that's a hard thing. Okay? And so needless to say, I had some challenges. But I remember I was meeting a lot of different people and having a lot of conversations. And I remember the acquaintance came up to me and said, hey, the biblical story of creation is a myth. And I've never had anybody tell me that. And I remember, I didn't say much, but I just remember inside being upset that somebody told me what I believe is a myth. And what did I do as a college student? I just kind of got upset inside and just walked away. But I realized deep down inside that wasn't the right response. There was something wrong with the way I handled that. And so I decided, I'm doing all these science courses, I need to expand my horizons. So I decided to start taking other things. I took philosophy, Old Testament survey, New Testament survey, Japanese. And I just started doing other things that were outside of the math and science arena. But you know what? I started reading a lot. And I came across an essay that kind of had me question a lot of things. A philosopher I really like is William James, and he published a lecture in 1896 called The Will to Believe. And I read this thing, it said, true beliefs can lose their value if properly cultivated. And I stopped in my tracks. I had to reread that again. Because I was just thinking to myself how I responded to my friend, and God, was my beliefs not truly cultivated? The first time I had myself answering these questions. And so then I read John Stuart Mill. And he said, however true it may be, if you do not fully, frequently, or fearlessly discuss the items that you believe, it will be held as a dead dogma and not a living truth. And so the first time in my life, I came to a crossroads in my spiritual life saying, well, is my spirituality a dead dogma? Did I grow up in a hyper-religious family? My parents told me certain things, and I just accepted it, never questioned it. And so I was really at spiritual crossroads, and I began to start asking a lot of integral questions. I had to go back to the basic tenets of my faith to answer what I believed, and you know what? I will probably hit down into the spiritual low, but what I realized is that by asking all those questions, I just kind of reinforced my faith because I answered things personally. And so things really began to take off. Academically, I was doing well in college, and I'm still gearing up for medical school. But I had one major issue. I still couldn't connect in my church body. So I did what any college student would do. I grew my facial hair out, let my hair grow out a little bit, got some dingy clothes, and I enrolled in poverty simulation. And so I went voluntarily homeless. The first day was interesting. I held up a sign, and I sat on the corner of the street for hours. And it was an interesting time because by the time I got maybe about 75 to 80 cents, it was hours that went by. I was chased by dogs. I carried a stick around because it was just interesting walking around the streets of Waco. But it's interesting, after that experience, I had a whole different insight, right? Because I never walked in the shoes of these people around and I had a lot of preconceived myths about who homeless people were, I couldn't bond with the brethren in the congregation. And for the first time, I was able to bond. And I got to know people. And there were individuals who went out to war, came back, their family was gone, and they had PTSD and were homeless. There was one man who was locked in a closet by his parents for most of his childhood. And these weren't all just people drinking alcohol and smoking, which is the usual conception. And gosh, it was just an invaluable experience. So by grace of God, I then matriculated into UTMB medical school, and it was a very busy time, and Ryan over there was with me. I haven't seen Ryan in a while, and I'll tell you, I had a Kool-Aid smile seeing him today. And I met some friends that I've had for a lifetime now. I prayed a lot for a spouse, and in medical school I met my lovely wife. But my oncology interest began to grow. I remained an introverted Christian. I really wouldn't talk to you about that sort of thing unless you asked me. And even if you asked me, I probably wouldn't say a lot. But I came across a medical school classmate who knew Isaac and went to church with Isaac. And I said, hey, how's Isaac doing? Is he still well? Is he still cancer-free? And he was free of cancer many years later. And that was neat. But I'll tell you, now with a little bit of medical background, I kind of understood the gravity of what happened. Because I'll tell you, as oncologists, you can ask Corey and Manish, we say you're terminal, right? But I always, in my practice, I'll say you're terminal unless God intervenes. And you know, the reason why I say that is for that childhood experience. In my third year of medical school, I met Mike Boyars. He was an internal medicine attending. He was a pulmonologist, and he was the associate program director. And this guy was amazing. He was the doctor I wanted to be. And you know, I wanted to do oncology, and now I'm starting, after meeting Mike Boyars and going through a rotation with him, I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to do internal medicine. It really confirmed my beliefs in what I wanted to apply for. And so I applied for internal medicine residency and stayed at Galveston because I wanted to be with Mike Boyars. And as many rotations as I could do with Dr. Kovoor, that's what I tried to do. And my wife and I got married during residency, and that was probably the best part of my residency altogether, hands down. And it's interesting, when I was an intern, I met a guy named Tom. He was an endocrinology fellow, and he was leading a Bible study. He said, hey, Phil, do you want to come? And he asked Nelson, who was my co-intern, and I went. And I'll tell you, I went to this Bible study, and wow, these were Christians on steroids. I mean, they were saying Bible verses left and right. I lived like a deer in headlights. And Nelson and I walked off, and we were like, wow, we need the elementary version of Bible study. But we were intrigued, so we kept coming. And what was interesting about that is I went back, caught my attention. And Tom, the leader of this group, you know, he's talking about the Great Commission. And that's Matthew 28:19. It says, therefore go and be disciples of all nations, and baptize in the name of the Father and the Son and Holy Spirit. And he said, what does this mean? And I said, well, I don't know. And he goes, well, you need to share the good news. If you got the winning lottery ticket, you should tell people about it. And I told Tom, I said, well, I'm an introverted Christian. I'm glad God blessed you with that talent, but I don't have that talent. And he said, well, Phil, you're wrong. And I said, well, why don't we agree to disagree? And I left it like that. Now, Nelson took it to heart because he said the same thing to Nelson. And I'll say about a month or two later, I was post-call. Nelson and I didn't sleep the entire night. And then at a distance, I remember seeing him. So when you're post-call, you're kind of raggedy, you're tired, you're cranky. You can ask my wife, she'll know. And so at a distance, I see Nelson, and he has this glow on his face. And I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking to myself, why are you smiling? You're post-call, you're just as tired as I am. And so I walked up to him and I said, Nelson, why are you so happy? And he looked at me and he said, Phil, I did it. And I said, did what? And he said, I had a patient that was really, really sick and needed some spiritual counseling. So I prayed with my patient. And I could see this glow on his face. He was so happy. And I was like, well, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? You're like me. And he said, well, I just prayed about it and I saw the opportunity and it happened. And so it's interesting. I'm riding my bicycle back home and thinking about what Nelson said and getting ready to go to sleep. And honestly, I say a prayer and it wasn't anything eloquent. I just said, look, God, I'd like to do what Nelson did. And I had one of those, what I'd say is Elijah moments. In Isaiah 6:8, it says, then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Here I am, send me. And I had one of those moments, send me, pick me. But I had a couple strings attached. I said, make the opportunity clear for me and give me the words. Because you know who I am. I'm a little introverted by nature and just not really what I'd like to do. And it's interesting. God delivered in an interesting way. 1 week later after saying this, I was in my continuity clinic, and this is an internal medicine clinic. And there was a guy that I was taking care of. He was in his 30s at the time. He had a rare neurologic condition, and I saw him every 2 to 3 months. Around like clockwork. He was just one of my go-to patients that I always see connected with. And he was always with his mom. And his mom was his advocate. She did everything for him. Taking all the notes, okay, doc, what's the dose? What am I taking? And she'd bring the meds in, she'd follow all the instructions. And this day, for whatever reason, she was not there. And I was like, well, where's she at? It's the first time in 2 years she's not made it to a doctor's appointment, so the first thing I asked is, where's your mom? And he said, unexpectedly, my mom passed away in the hospital just a few days ago. And I said, you made it to the appointment? And so he really wanted to get a refill on his meds, and he was heartbroken. But gosh, I could understand the gravity of what he's feeling because I knew the connection. And in that moment, I'm telling you, I heard a voice in my head just saying it's time. And, I said, well, look, why don't we pray together? And we did. And, my heart was racing, I was sweating, and at the end of that prayer, he was tearing up, I was in tears, and I'll tell you, I never had a connection like that with the patient. And the glow that Nelson had, I shared in that moment. And I realized, wow, that was a neat feeling. I was really able to help somebody. Before that, I'm helping people physically. I'm helping people emotionally. The first time I help somebody spiritually. And we go through this journey, it's not just a physical, it's just not an emotional journey, it's a spiritual journey too. And that's something I, till that point, had neglected. And so I became more and more interested in oncology. I was doing research, and I was just in the oncology department, inundated. And I secured this fellowship spot actually in Galveston, even before NASH. The attending was already said, hey, this is where you're going to be. But my wife was traveling. And she was going up and down the eastern seaboard, so we were dating long distance, engaged long distance, and now happen to be married long distance, and that's not easy. And then my mentor, I went on vacation and came back, and the guy that mentored me, he was just gone. I mean, I didn't get an email, anything. I showed back up to work, and they just said he was gone. He left. He went and took another job, and I had no idea. I'd say I was a little heartbroken. And so, right around this time, I get called in the chief's office. And Corey probably knows this, but if you get called in the chief's office, 90% of the time, that is not a good thing, okay? And my whole career, I'd never been called in the chief's office, and I was nervous. I was like, well, why are you calling? I'm thinking about the week and what patients I admitted, did I mess up? And And I go in, and the chief said, hey, you know what, Nathan Fowler, one of our former residents, said there's a spot open up at Georgetown. Are you interested in this at all? And are you still interested in oncology? And everybody knew I was interested in oncology by then. And so I said, yeah. And I was thinking about this, talking to my wife about it. And for the first time I said, well, you know, my mentor left and you're traveling. Maybe I can be in the middle of your travels and see each other more often. So we decided to go in and interview. And a week later, they called me and said, hey, come down. And so I accepted a spot there and we moved to DC. But I have to tell you a few things about myself. I was born in Philly, but I got to Texas as soon as I could. And so I'm a Texan. And for me, if you grow up in Texas, you know a few things. This is the United States of Texas, right? And so you don't see beyond the borders. You can ask my wife how that is. You guys, you people, you guys are just all Texas. You got Texas everywhere. And so for me to go out to DC was definitely a change. I was getting outside of my comfort level. I was getting outside of the Bible Belt. And I was worried. I was actually very worried about where my church home would be. And I remember for 6 months, I prayed every day about where I'd go to church. I ended up going to orientation at Georgetown, and it was interesting. The first day of orientation, the first person I met, after telling me her name, you know what she told me next? She said, this is my church, please attend. And I took that from the sign for God, and I attended the Clean Bible Church there for the next 4 years. But this was an interesting time because you know, I left somewhere in Texas, which is considered the Bible Belt. You can easily talk about your faith here in Texas, but in DC it's different. It's not considered culturally acceptable to sort of do that. And so I had this sort of newfound faith, and I'm in DC. And we were talking to God, like, why are you taking me out? You just kind of gave me this new motivation, and this is where I'm going. But I was convicted. In Luke 10:2, it says, the harvest is bountiful, but the workers are few. And I wanted to be a worker in the field. So that's what I prayed for, because I could be a worker in the field and I could help patients in that way. But oncology was a very different place. So I was in internal medicine, now I'm in oncology, and wow, it's just different. People came to you as their last line of hope. And that's a different feeling. And I didn't see that in internal medicine the same way. But also your connections, when people come to you as your last line of hope, let me tell you, you get connected. You know, you really have deep bonds with your patients, and I felt that. But you know, I'd asked in prayer just for any opportunity I could get. If I could pray, if I could witness, if I could encourage, if I could make somebody laugh, if I could just hug somebody. And man, these opportunities were everywhere. And I found deep purpose while I was in that fellowship, in that journey. And, you know, we would do ward months, and there would be people in the hospital for months, and you try to find ways to just kind of help them through this, and you just get these deep connections. And I remember a friend of mine, she came up to me and she said, hey, you know what, a lot of our attendings don't share the same beliefs as you do. You should be careful. I don't want you to lose your job. And for the first time, I was like, wow, I've never had anyone tell me that. And hey, I worked my whole life to get here. I didn't want to mess that up. And I'm married and I got a family. And C.S. Lewis said, only a real risk tests the reality of the belief. And I thought that. I said, well, do I take the real risk? Is this really a belief? And so I come home and I told my wife kind of what my brain said, and she told me something that I never forget, which was, hey, if you lose your job serving the Lord, we'll find another one. That's all I needed. So I picked up the cross and continued carrying it, and it was one of the best 3 or 4 years of life, not only intellectually, as I was learning oncology, but just as a servant to all these patients to take care of them. In my 3rd year, I was honored with the position of chief fellow, and I went into administration. So I did a lot of administration. I was doing less patient work. And it was an interesting time of life, because I actually found myself doing all this administration stuff that I was the least happy. Because I felt like my calling in life was to be with patients, but I was doing a lot of desk work and all these sort of things. But I won a lot of distinctions. I was the first fellow to win the Fellow of the Year award in the oncology department. I was the first physician in Georgetown to win the Superstar Employee of the Month, first physician, period. And I was just like, wow, God, you're blessing me. But you get all these accolades, but I wasn't happy. And because I was, I wanted to be a worker in the field, and I was doing administration things. And it's interesting, as I was wrapping up at Georgetown, I was trying to figure out where to go. And I was praying for direction. Do I stay on staff at Georgetown? I was looking at the NIH and looking at different private practices. And long story short, I won't go into all those details. I ended up accepting a job here in Plano. If you ask me later, I'll tell you the scoop behind it, because some of that's actually pretty funny. But I joined a practice in 2009, and I met two brothers, Manish and Mark. And it's interesting, I came with the seed of not doing administration, not doing leadership roles. I wanted to be a busy bee. That's what I wanted to do. But I came, and Mark was the medical director, and Manish was pretty much the director of everything else in oncology. And so I was just kind of riding their shadows. So it was pretty easy to go under the radar. This is actually the first time I've ever attended the Survivors Dinner. I'm embarrassed because I've been here since 2009. But I had that in my mind, but you know what was interesting right now was the attending. All my life, striving to this point. And I was humbled because it was just a great feeling to say, hey, you worked hard to get to where you are, and you get to service the needs of just beautiful people all around you, and to have a good work environment. And then Corey joined too, and then we just cut from the same cloth, and it was amazing. So my motto in life is, I tell you, my favorite scripture verse of all time is Matthew 5:16. It says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, so they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I was very content to just let my light shine and plant seeds. But I realized something. The responsibility as an attending is paramount. We have a lot of things riding in the decisions we make and the things that we're doing to help our patients. And I needed to change a few things. I didn't have a time carved out for meditation, prayer, just to kind of focus. And I took Jesus as an example. He rose up in the morning hours, and the first thing he did was pray. And if Jesus needed to do it, how much more do I have to do it? Right? So I carved out some time and decided, hey, I'm just going to focus on scripture reading. I'm going to focus on prayer. And all these emotions and things that we deal with on a daily basis, I'm just going to channel them. And I'll tell you, it changed my life in a profound way. I found purpose. I found clarity. And I feel like I was able to have a meaningful difference in people's lives. And you had a spirit-driven life. In Christianity, we call this thing spirit-driven, where you listen to where you feel like you're being called to. And I'll give you an example of that. One time I was in the office, and I got a consult late at night, and I saw this elderly man with pancreatic cancer. And he had a pretty bad post-operative course, and he was bouncing back, and I spent half an hour with him. About 4 to 5 times during the conversation, though, he stopped me, and he said, I wish my wife was here. And I told him, I gave my card, and I said, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. When your wife comes to the office 2 to 3 weeks later, I'll talk to your wife, your daughter, anybody you want me to talk to. Okay? And I left. I thought, okay, I'd be okay. And so the next day I go to clinic, and if anybody's in my practice, I see multiple people, I get behind because I talk. And I was 50 minutes behind to an hour behind, so I finished my morning clinic at 11:50, or 12:50 rather, and I had 10 minutes. I start clinic at 1, and I've got patients around now, likely not going to eat lunch. And so what's my normal MO is I'm blitzing, grabbing my phone, returning my phone calls, and running to the hospital. And I'm trying to run back before Amanda pages me, telling me we got patients. You need to hurry up, you got 2, you got 3 patients. So that's my normal sort of MO, but I walked out the office and I got this overwhelming feeling to slow down. And very unnatural. But I listened, and I slowed down. I didn't pull out my phone. Looking around, enjoying the weather. Got to the elevator, I saw this woman at a distance actually, and I decided I wanted to wait for her. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and she finally made it. And she looked at my badge, and she came in, I said, ma'am, where are you headed? And she said, the third floor. And she looked at me and she said, you're the doctor I need. And I thought, oh, in my mind, I was thinking, you're mistaking me for my better looking partner, Manish. And, but then in that moment, I realized, well, I had to slow down. Maybe there's something here, so I just stepped out of the elevator. I was going up to the oncology floor, and I stepped out, and she says, you talked to my husband yesterday, and I missed it. And then I saw all this emotion. She was so frustrated and upset that she missed the conversation. Her husband wasn't able to translate everything that I said, and she really wanted to see me. She didn't want to wait 2 weeks. She didn't want to wait 3 weeks. And so outside the elevator, I spent 20, 30 minutes talking to her. But then I saw the burdens that she was carrying lifted. She gave me a big hug. I walked away, and I'll tell you the first thing I did is I thank God for recognizing an opportunity to serve. Because this woman needed me, and I don't think it was chance. In this 7th floor hospital with thousands of people, the one person who wanted to talk to me, I see in the elevator, just me and her. And the best part, I'll tell you though, of my practice, the most fulfilling, is when my cousin Joshua came to rotate with me. Now Joshua is the younger brother of my cousin Marion that passed away. And he called me up one day and he said, yeah, I want to do pre-med. And I said, Josh, do you understand how hard it is? Do you know how much you have to do? Do you know how much school you have to do? Do you know you're going to neglect your family? And he said, well, yeah, I get it. But I said, before you do that, at least come and see what a doctor does. Have you ever seen that? He said, no. I said, well, how do you know you want to be a doctor if you've never seen what we do? And I said, come rotate with me. So he came with me. So in that week, he followed me around. When we were up on the floors, he's diabetic actually, so the sugar went low, and actually got written up, Brian, because we got his finger stick done because his glucose was too low on the floor. And so, I forget to eat, and so he didn't eat, the sugar went down, and I was like, oh gosh, I gotta stop. And so the whole week that he was there, I made sure I ate 3 squares because he needed it. And, but it's interesting, he went through the whole week with me, and we prayed with patients, we laughed with patients, we cried with patients, we hugged patients, and he saw the whole spectrum of emotion. At the end of the week, I was sitting up at my house and upstairs, and he came up to me and just asked me a very honest question. He said, why do you do this? Why do you put yourself out there like that? That's an emotional thing that you do. And it's interesting, I paused, and I'll be honest, I was choking up because I told him, I said, look, it started with your sister. If she never had that cancer diagnosis, I would not be where I am today. And that scripture that I thought was wrong, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope in the future. There was truly a hope. There was a future, and I just didn't see that at 17. It took me many years later to understand the purpose behind it. And it was interesting, I was watching him, and you could just see a weight lifted off his shoulders. Because he was carrying scars. Because all he saw was a senseless death, and then he never got to know his older sister. But for the first time, I think he saw purpose. And that was the most satisfying thing that I've been able to be a part of while I've been here. But the one thing I'll tell you is that when I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and you get really emotionally invested in your patients, right? And we're a survivor dinner. These are the things that keep us going. But at times, in an oncology clinic, we see an unnatural amount of death and dying. We just do, multiple times a day. And initially, I'd come back and I can't give patient names, so I'd vent to my wife about different things. But, I realized that she was carrying burdens. And I couldn't make her sad with the stories that I kept. And so it was very difficult. And I remember that one day, and this was a day I almost had a breaking point, I'll be honest. In the morning, I had 4 conversations. They were hospice and progression talks, and people were dying. And I remember it was so emotional and so tough that by the afternoon, I was struggling. I went in my office, I actually closed my door, I said a prayer, and I said, God, why are you doing this? It's too much in one day. I can't handle this. And then it's interesting, the afternoon I had 3 more conversations. And I was struggling because it's just like, why am I having to do 70 conversations in one day? Because you know what, when you're with patients and you get emotionally invested, they feel like an extension of your own family. So anytime you give tough news, it takes a little bit out of you, right? And you feel a little bit like a failure if things are not working out, regardless if you're giving them the best treatment that you can give them. And Amanda knew it was a rough day, and I got through it. At the lunch hour, I can tell you, I texted my wife and said, just pray for him. And if you ask my wife, she knows I don't text her during the day. So she knew something wasn't right. And then I finished right about 5 o'clock. And I was like, oh, Lord, finally I've completed this day. And then Amanda brings a scan on my desk. And somebody had new brain mets. And I had to call them and tell them that. And I remember thinking, gosh, like how much more can we handle today? And I got through that conversation, and they're going to see me the next day. But at 5:20 p.m., and I remember this like this was yesterday, the weight of the world was lifted. The weight of the world was lifted. I had a peace that transcended all understanding, and I didn't understand it. Okay? And so I went home, and I felt fine. And, but then when I got home, my oldest son, Noah, he came up to me and he said, he hugged me, and then he asked me how I'm doing. Well, that's an interesting question, because he never asked me how I'm doing. And so I said, no, why are you asking me how I'm doing? I'm fine. And he goes, well, Mommy said you had a tough day. And I said, oh, Mommy did? And then he said, yeah, you prayed for me. And so I asked my wife, what time did you pray for me? 5:20. Scripture says, out of the mouth of babes comes the truth. And in that moment, I realized that God really answered that prayer. That although I didn't think I had it in me to do it, He gave me the strength to do it, and I was able to serve those patients in that critical time of need where they needed me. And so, one thing I do in my prayers, there's a scripture, it's in Isaiah 54, it says, the sovereign Lord has given me words of wisdom so that I know how to comfort the weary. Morning by morning, He awakens me and opens my understanding to His will. And that's one of my goals, is to comfort the weary and to understand what God's purpose is in my life. It's an unnatural thing to see so much death and dying. And how do we rationalize these things? And I'm going to be honest with you, the only way I can rationalize it is in faith. In John 16:33 it says, in me you have peace, in the world you have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. What does that mean? Take heart. It means be courageous. Right? And when you go through cancer, that's the trouble in the world, but if we want peace, why don't we go to the one that overcame the world? And we can find peace and have courage in this journey. And so my message is very simple. By faith and grace, we're granted eternal security, so we have hope. And if we're a cancer patient going through this journey and we recognize that, we are truly in a win-win. If we beat this cancer like everybody in the Survivor's Dinner, we won. But if we were to lose this battle, where do you go? You go to heaven. So we win even bigger. And if you think of cancer as a win-win, cancer can't take your purpose from you. Cancer can't make you sad because you know where you're going. And that's the peace that we have. And that's my message. Now, in 2015, I'll share something that I haven't shared with many people. At the end of 2015, I sensed a change in my life. I didn't understand what it was. I prayed for discernment on what this change was. And it was a tough year. If anybody knows us as a group, you know this was a really challenging year. But on a personal level, my father-in-law in December 2015 had a 5-vessel cabbage. I work at a heart hospital. I do hematology at a heart hospital. And that's the first time I saw a 5-vessel bypass. My grandfather, the patriarch of our family, he passed away at 96. And my father, who was so able, immediately after the funeral, he broke his leg, and he was unable. And that was hard to see. On April 4th, 2016, my identity was stolen. The person that I seek wise counsel from was Mark Engelman. And of course, he's like my big brother, so I walked down there and I was just fussing just how my identity got stolen, what do I do? And Mark, he's busy, he stops and just closes the door and he says, hey, Phil, do this, 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 and this. File a police report, call this, call that, call. And so I made my list of everything that Mark told me to go do. But little did I know that was the last conversation I would have with him. Because on April 5th at 4 a.m., I got a text from Manish Gupta saying that Mark Engelman went into a cardiac arrest, was on a ventilator. And this part's hard. I went to go rush to the hospital, but before I went, my wife and I prayed. And I said that I don't have that many friends. Please don't take him away. That Saturday, he went home to be with the Lord. And I'll be honest with you, it was a tough, tough time. I've never lost somebody so integrated in my daily routine. Somebody that I talked to 5 to 10 times a day. Someone that was my mentor. Someone that loved me, took care of me. And it was tough. I held his hand when he took his last breath. And it was a very surreal feeling. But, you know, I matured in my spirituality. Isaiah 55:9 says, for just as the heavens are higher than the earth, my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And you know what? In that moment, I just submitted and said, God, you're in control. Doesn't feel like it, but I know you're in control. And I submit to your ways, and I submit to your thoughts. And I learned that from Murray. When she passed, I was angry. I channeled those feelings in the wrong way. When Mark passed, I got motivated. And I felt convicted to pick up where Mark left off, to carry that torch. Mark Engelman built this cancer center. There was not a cancer registry, there was not tumor boards, there's not all these fancy pictures of what we were doing. That vision, all of that started with Mark Engelman. And so I prayed for direction, and I told you I had a seed planted that I didn't want to be administration, I didn't want to do a leadership role, I wanted to be a worker of the field. But I felt convicted that that's what I needed to do now. And so I went to Jerry Garrison, and I met with her, and I said, hey, I'd like to put my name in the hat for this medical directorship role. I know I haven't served, and Manish and Mark pushed me to do things, and I found creative ways not to do things, and you can ask them. And so I didn't know what she was going to think. I didn't know what she was going to say, because, you know, if you're going to be a medical director, you're going to probably want to do a few things. And they talked it over, and they met, and as of September of 2016, they offered me that spot. But I want to tell you something. A year before, the executive pastor at my church, this is September now, 2015, invited me to do a study. It was for leaders. And because he was the executive pastor, he was a friend of mine, I just said, yeah, I'll do it. After about 3 courses, I came home and told my wife, I said, I don't really want to do this. I'm not going to be a leader. I'm not even the leader in my house. You're the leader. So I don't think I need this. You know, we're busy. And you know, she looked at me and she just basically said, suck it up, buttercup. And you go. So I went and she said, sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about someone around you. And I met a few people in that study that actually needed some oncology advice, and I gave that advice. But when I look back, I didn't think I needed those courses. I didn't think I needed to sit through those things, but God knew what I needed, and He knew where I would be in September of 2016, and He knew that my skills needed to be honed. And I was humbled by that, because I didn't know it. I wanted to quit. I didn't want to go. So where do I go with this? And I think by God's grace, what I hope to do is to bring the Cancer Center to new heights. To take it beyond where Mark took it so he could look down at us and smile. That's my vision. I pray that when patients come to this campus, that they would feel God's love. That if we love God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, and love our neighbor as ourselves, our light would shine and we would do this the right way. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kovoor. That was awesome. Can we give him one more round of applause, please? So I want to take one moment to thank Texas Wind. They're the band here. I think they've already left for the night, but they did an outstanding job. And then lastly, and most important, I want to thank every single one of you for being here tonight. You are the ones who made this night special, and we thank you for making it special for us.